My name is Derek Vaughn. I'm using my real name because I don't care anymore about the consequences, about the lawsuits, about the threats. 3 men are in psychiatric facilities right now, unable to speak except in voices that aren't their own, unable to function, unable to explain what happened to them. And I'm the reason they're there. I'm the foreman who kept them on that site. I'm the one who told them it was safe. I'm the one who didn't listen when the forest started warning us to leave. I spent 20 years working remote logging operations across the Pacific Northwest. I've led crews through grizzly territory, through winter storms that should have killed us, through equipment failures and accidents that tested every ounce of experience I had. I thought I'd seen everything the wilderness could throw at a work crew. I thought I understood the risks, the dangers, the boundaries of what was possible out there. I was wrong about everything. What happened on that logging site 60 miles north of the Canadian border wasn't an animal attack. It wasn't a workplace accident. It wasn't bad luck or poor planning or any of the things the official report claims. It was a message, a deliberate, calculated, terrifyingly intelligent message delivered by something that wanted us to understand exactly what we'd done wrong and exactly what the consequences would be. And the worst part? The attack itself. The night 3 of my men were taken from their beds and dragged into the forest. That wasn't the terrifying part. What we found the next morning, what had been done to those men, what had been arranged for us to discover in the dawn light, that's what broke us. That's what destroyed 3 lives and haunts the rest of us every single day. I'm recording this from a motel room I paid for in cash, using a laptop with no connection to my real identity. I'm breaking a non-disclosure agreement that came with a settlement large enough to set me up for life. The timber company, I won't name them, but you can probably guess which one, paid everyone on that crew to stay silent, to accept the official story, to move on with our lives and never speak about what really happened. But I can't stay silent anymore. I can't watch the news and see missing hikers, disappeared campers, unexplained wilderness incidents, and not say something. Because I know what's out there. I know what it's capable of. And I know that we crossed a line that should never have been crossed. Before I tell you what happened, before I describe what we found that morning, I need you to do something. Hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. I know how that sounds, like I'm treating this as entertainment, like I'm trying to profit from tragedy. But that's not why I'm asking. I'm asking because I need this story to reach as many people as possible before the company finds me, before their lawyers shut this down, before I end up like the others, silenced permanently, one way or another. Subscribe because someone needs to remember what happened. Someone needs to know the truth. And if something happens to me, if I disappear or have an accident or suddenly recant everything I'm about to say, at least this video will still exist somewhere, preserved and shared and impossible to completely erase. Now let me tell you about the site. We were working a remote tract of old-growth forest in the North Cascades, accessible only by logging road, 60 miles from the nearest town. It was a 2-week rotation, 7 men, enough equipment to clear 10 acres of designated timber, and a base camp set up with temporary structures for sleeping, eating, and equipment storage. Standard operation. I'd run dozens like it. The crew was experienced. Mike Henderson, my equipment operator, 15 years on heavy machinery. Carlos Reyes and Tommy Park, both veteran loggers with certifications in high-risk cutting. James Woodward, our safety coordinator and medic. And 3 younger guys, Brad Chun, Marcus Rivers, and Devin Hall, strong workers in their late 20s, hungry to prove themselves, eager to take on the harder assignments. We arrived on a Monday in late October. Weather was perfect, cool, crisp, clear skies. The trees were massive, some of them over 200 years old, the kind of old-growth Douglas fir that fetches premium prices. The company had all the permits, all the environmental clearances, all the legal authorization to take those trees down. Everything was by the book. Everything was legitimate. But from the first day, something felt wrong. Nothing I could point to specifically. Just a feeling. The forest was too quiet. Birds were scarce. We'd see deer tracks, but never the deer themselves. Elk had clearly been in the area recently, fresh signs everywhere. But they'd moved on, moved out, Abandoned territory they should have been defending. Ghost forest, Mike called it on day 2. Everything's cleared out. Like they know something we don't. I laughed it off. Told him we were probably just seeing the natural effects of human presence. Wildlife avoiding the noise and activity. But privately, I noticed it too. The silence. The absence. The feeling of being watched from the shadows between those massive trunks. Days 1 through 7 proceeded normally. We marked trees, cleared access routes, set up our cutting schedule. Productivity was good. Morale was high. The crew worked efficiently, taking down designated timber, processing it for transport, staying on schedule and under budget. Management was happy. I was happy. Everything was going exactly as planned. Then day 8 arrived, and the strangeness began in earnest. We'd marked 40 trees for cutting. Bright orange paint, clear indicators, impossible to miss. When we arrived at the site that morning, the marks were gone. Not faded, not weathered. Gone. Completely removed, like someone had carefully scraped every trace of paint off the bark. Kids messing with us, Tommy suggested, though we all knew there were no kids within 60 miles. Animals rubbing against the trees, Carlos offered, though we all knew that wouldn't remove paint that thoroughly. We remarked the trees and went to work. But other things started happening. Equipment we'd left positioned one way would be moved overnight, not damaged, not stolen, just repositioned. Chainsaws that we'd fueled would be empty the next morning. Tools would disappear from one location and turn up somewhere else, always visible, always findable, but clearly moved deliberately. Someone's screwing with us, Brad said, anger in his voice. Someone's on this site at night. We set up motion-activated cameras, thinking maybe it was protesters, environmental activists trying to sabotage the operation. The cameras caught nothing. No humans. No vehicles. Just occasional glimpses of movement too fast to identify, shapes that might have been shadows or might have been something else. Then we started finding the markers. Trees around our camp had been damaged, massive scratches gouged into bark, too high for any bear, too deep for any animal I'd ever encountered. Some scratches were 10 feet up, carved with such force they'd exposed the heartwood beneath. And they weren't random. They formed patterns, borders. A line of marked trees circling our entire work area. Territorial markers. Warnings. Boundaries we were being told not to cross. We should leave, Devin said on night 8, voice shaking slightly. This isn't right. Something's telling us to get out. It's nothing, I told him, told all of them, told myself. Wildlife behaving strangely. Maybe a grizzly in the area, marking territory. We're safe in numbers, we're armed, and we're almost done. 3 more days, and we're out of here. 3 more days. I wish I'd listened to Devin. I wish I'd trusted my instincts instead of my pride, my schedule, my need to finish the job and collect the bonus. I wish I'd put those men on the transport truck that afternoon and gotten them away from that place. But I didn't. And that night, everything changed. Around 2 a.m., I woke to screaming. Not human screaming. Not at first. The first sound was wood splintering, massive cracks like trees falling, but coming from our camp. I grabbed my flashlight and stumbled out of my bunk to find our sleeping quarters being torn apart. The walls, prefab wooden panels designed for quick setup and breakdown, were being peeled away like paper, ripped off in sections, deliberately, methodically, creating openings large enough for something massive to reach inside. And reaching inside was exactly what was happening. I saw Brad first. He was being pulled through a hole in the wall, hands grasping at the edges, screaming, kicking, fighting against something I couldn't see clearly in the darkness. Then he was gone, dragged out into the night, his screams fading into the distance. Marcus was next. I tried to reach him, tried to grab his arm as he was lifted. Literally lifted off his bunk and carried toward a gap in the wall. I caught a glimpse of what held him, a massive hand, covered in dark hair, fingers wrapping completely around his torso. He looked at me, eyes wide with terror, mouth open to scream, and then he was gone too. Carlos was shouting orders, trying to organize us, trying to get everyone to the equipment shed where we stored the heavy tools and vehicles. Mike was herding James and Tommy ahead of him. Devin was frozen, standing in the middle of the chaos, staring at something outside that I couldn't see. Move. I grabbed Devin and shoved him toward the door, and that's when I saw them. Figures outside. Multiple figures. Massive. 8 feet tall at minimum, some larger. Silhouettes against the moonlight, broad-shouldered and upright, moving with coordinated purpose through our camp. Not lumbering like bears. Not moving like any animal I'd ever seen. They moved like people, like soldiers executing a plan. One of them noticed me watching, turned its head, too fluid, too controlled, and looked directly at me. Even in the darkness, even with only moonlight to see by, I could make out its face. Flat features, deep-set eyes, an expression that wasn't rage, wasn't hunger, wasn't animal instinct. It was disappointment, like a parent catching a child doing something wrong, like a teacher witnessing a student's failure. Then it reached for the door where I stood, and I ran. The 6 of us that remained, me, Mike, Carlos, Tommy, James, and Devin, barricaded ourselves in the equipment shed. It was the most secure structure we had, concrete floor and reinforced walls designed to protect expensive machinery from weather and theft. We locked the doors, blocked them with lumber, armed ourselves with axes, chainsaws, anything we could use as a weapon. And then we waited. For 4 hours. We waited while something circled that shed. We heard breathing, deep, rhythmic, multiple sources. We heard scratching at the walls, testing, probing, searching for weaknesses. We heard vocalizations, low sounds that rose and fell like conversation, like discussion, like something deciding what to do with us. At one point, something hit the wall hard enough to make the entire structure shudder. A warning. A demonstration of power. A reminder that if they wanted in, they could get in, and there was nothing we could do to stop them. But they didn't come in. They circled. They watched. They waited. And when dawn finally came, when the first light started filtering through the gaps in the shed walls, the sound stopped. The presence outside faded. The oppressive feeling of being trapped lifted. Silence fell. Complete. Total. Terrifying. We waited another 30 minutes, nobody speaking, everyone listening for any sign of movement. Finally, Mike spoke. We need to check on the others. Brad, Marcus, Devin, they might be hurt, might need help. I knew they were dead. I was certain of it. No one gets dragged into a forest by something that massive and survives. But Mike was right. We had to check. We had to try. We had to know. We opened the shed door slowly, cautiously, weapons ready. The camp looked like a disaster zone. The sleeping quarters were demolished, walls torn down, bunks overturned, belongings scattered. But as we stepped out, we realized something strange. The chaos wasn't random. It was organized. Our belongings, clothes, tools, personal items, supplies, had been sorted into piles. Clean piles. Organized by type. Food in one pile. Clothing in another. Tools in a third. Personal effects, wallets, phones, photos, stacked neatly in a fourth. It looked like someone had cleaned up after the attack. Like someone had gone through our things, categorized them, arranged them for easy identification. What the hell is this? Tommy whispered. And then we saw the center of the camp. In the clearing where we usually gathered for meals and briefings, something had been arranged. Something impossible. Something that made me understand we weren't dealing with animals. We were dealing with intelligence, with intent, with something that wanted to teach us a lesson we'd never forget. The 3 men, Brad, Marcus, and Devin, were sitting in the clearing, alive, physically unharmed as far as I could see, but wrong. Everything about them was wrong. They were positioned in a perfect triangle formation, each man exactly 20 feet from the others, sitting upright with their backs straight, hands in their laps, eyes open and staring straight ahead. Not at each other, not at us. At specific points beyond the camp perimeter. Brad. Mike ran toward him, and I followed, everyone following, desperate to help, to check them, to understand what had happened. But when we reached them, when we got close enough to see clearly, we understood this wasn't rescue. This was display. The 3 men were catatonic. Eyes open but unseeing. Breathing but unresponsive. When I waved my hand in front of Brad's face, He didn't blink. When Mike shook Marcus's shoulder, Marcus didn't react. Devin didn't even seem to register our presence. And then I noticed where they were facing. Each man was positioned to look directly at one of the 3 massive Douglas firs we'd scheduled to cut that morning. The trees we'd marked for removal. The trees that represented our next day's work. "Oh God," Carlos breathed. "They're facing the trees." And in each man's lap, placed carefully, deliberately, ceremonially, their chainsaws. Broken into pieces. Disassembled with precision. Blades, motors, handles, all separated and arranged in neat rows across their legs, like offerings on an altar. I felt my skin go cold. This wasn't violence. This wasn't animal attack. This was a message. A statement. A punishment designed to communicate something specific. You came here to cut down these trees. You brought these tools to destroy what we protect. So we'll show you what happens when you cross that line. We need to get them to a hospital, James said, his medic training kicking in. Now, they're in shock. They need professional care. Look, Tommy interrupted, pointing at the trees around the clearing. The trees that surrounded where the men said had been carved. Not scratched randomly. Not damaged by thrashing or fighting. Carved. Deliberately. With images. Crude but clear. Human figures holding tools. Cutting motions. Trees falling. And above those images, watching from higher up the trunk, larger figures. Massive figures with broad shoulders and long arms, observing the humans at work. It was a story. A pictograph record of what we'd been doing here. What we'd been destroying. What we'd been taking from this forest. And, at the bottom of each tree, gouged deep into the bark, stick figures of humans being carried away. Being taken. Being removed from the forest by the larger figures watching from above. This was what happens when you don't listen to warnings, the carvings said. This is what we do to those who take too much. This is the price of crossing boundaries you don't understand. I need to stop here. I need you to understand what I'm saying. I need you to comment below and tell me if you've ever heard of Bigfoot behavior like this. Have you heard of them displaying bodies, alive but damaged, as warnings? Have you heard of them carving messages? Have you heard of intelligent punishment designed to teach lessons? Because what we found that morning wasn't animal behavior. It wasn't instinct or territoriality or food acquisition. It was judgment. It was consequence. It was something old and intelligent deciding we needed to be taught what our actions meant. Comment below. Share this video. Tell me if there are other work crews who've experienced this. Tell me if I'm the only one who understands what really happened out there. Because I need to know I'm not losing my mind. I need to know that what I saw, what those 3 men experienced, what was done to them, I need to know it was real. We tried to move them. Tried to get Brad, Marcus, and Devin on their feet, tried to walk them to the vehicles, tried to get any response at all. They moved when physically manipulated. You could position their limbs, turn their heads, lift them. But they showed no will, no awareness, no recognition. James checked their vitals. Pulse normal. Breathing normal. Pupils reactive to light. Physically, they were fine. Mentally, they were gone. That's when Marcus spoke. Not in his own voice. Not with his own inflection. His mouth moved. Words came out, but the voice was wrong. Flat. Monotone. Like something using vocal cords that weren't designed for speech, forcing words through a system that didn't quite work right. They understand. They remember. They're older. Then silence. His mouth closed. His eyes stayed fixed on the tree ahead of him. No other response. No acknowledgement that he'd spoken. Just those words hanging in the air, impossible to misinterpret. They understand. They know what we're doing here. They comprehend our actions and intentions. They remember. This has happened before. They've dealt with humans like us before. They have history and memory. They are older. They were here first. They have claim. They have rights we're violating. It wasn't Marcus speaking. It was them. Using Marcus. Delivering a message through him. Making absolutely certain we understood this wasn't random, wasn't accident, wasn't anything except deliberate communication. Carlos started praying. Tommy threw up. Mike just stood there, staring, unable to process what we'd heard. Devin, the catatonic Devin, sitting in the clearing, remained silent, still staring at his assigned tree. I pulled out my satellite phone and called for emergency evacuation. Company protocol for serious injuries or medical emergencies. Helicopter extraction within 6 hours. I told them we had 3 men down, severe psychological trauma, needed immediate transport to medical facilities. The helicopter arrived in 3 hours. 3 hours. For a site 60 miles from civilization, that's impossibly fast. Like they'd been waiting. Like they'd been ready. Like they'd known something was going to happen and had assets positioned to respond immediately. The extraction team didn't ask questions. Didn't ask what happened. Didn't seem surprised by the condition of the 3 catatonic men. They loaded Brad, Marcus, and Devin onto the helicopter, sedated all 3 despite them showing no resistance, and took off within 15 minutes of landing. The rest of us were told to pack essentials and prepare for immediate evacuation. A second helicopter would arrive within the hour. We were to leave everything else, equipment, supplies, structures. Everything would be handled later by a specialized recovery team. What about what happened? I asked the extraction coordinator. What about the attack? What about what was done to those men? He looked at me with tired eyes. Bear attack. That's what the report says. 3 men suffered severe psychological trauma from a bear encounter. You and the others will be debriefed, examined, and compensated for the traumatic experience. That wasn't a bear, I said. You need to see the carvings, the arrangements, the message they left. There is no message, Mr. Vaughn. There was a bear attack. Everyone is very sorry for what you experienced. The company will take care of everything. We were flown out that afternoon, separated immediately upon landing. I never saw the other crew members again. Each of us was debriefed individually, given medical evaluations, and presented with settlement agreements. Very generous settlement agreements. Enough money to ensure comfortable retirement. And attached to those agreements, non-disclosure clauses with penalty provisions that would bankrupt anyone who violated them. We were told the official story. Bear attack, unusual bear behavior possibly caused by rabies or injury. 3 men suffering from severe PTSD requiring long-term psychiatric care. Site already burned in controlled forestry operation to prevent further incidents. They burned it. Within a week of our extraction, the entire area was subjected to controlled burn. Official reason, disease management and fire prevention. Real reason, destroy every trace of what happened there. Destroy the carvings. Destroy the evidence. Destroy the proof that something intelligent had punished us for what we were doing. I signed the agreement. What choice did I have? I had no proof, no evidence, nothing except my story and the stories of 5 other traumatized men who'd just been offered life-changing money to stay quiet. I took the settlement. I signed the papers. I promised never to discuss what really happened. But I lied. I kept one thing. One piece of evidence they didn't know I had. Before the extraction team arrived, while everyone was panicking and preparing, I took my phone and photographed the tree carvings. Multiple angles, close-ups of the images, wide shots showing the context. I photographed the 3 men in their triangle formation. I photographed the broken chainsaws in their laps. I hid those photos in cloud storage under a fake account before they confiscated my phone for evidence preservation. Those photos still exist. And if I have to, if this video isn't enough, if no one believes me, I'll release them. Damn the lawsuits. Damn the consequences. The truth matters more than money or comfort or safety. Brad, Marcus, and Devin are still in psychiatric care. I've tried to find them, tried to check on their condition, but the facilities won't confirm they're even there. Privacy laws, medical confidentiality, legal restrictions. But I have sources, people who worked at those facilities, people who've told me things they shouldn't tell me. The 3 men never recovered. They remain catatonic, non-responsive, requiring total care. But occasionally, maybe once a month, maybe less, they speak. Same flat voice, same monotone delivery, Same impossible message. They understand. They remember. They are older. Over and over. The only words they'll say. The only communication they're capable of. Like they're stuck in that moment, forced to repeat the message forever, unable to move past what was done to them in that forest. The timber company listed the site as protected wilderness. Logging operations permanently suspended. Official reason: endangered species habitat protection. Real reason: keep everyone away from that place. Keep people from discovering what's there. Keep the forest and whatever lives in it separate from human activity. But I know it's not about protecting the forest. It's about protecting the secret. It's about maintaining the illusion that what happened was natural, was explainable, was within the boundaries of known wildlife behavior. Because if people knew the truth, if they understood that something intelligent lives in those forests, something that judges us, that punishes us, that communicates through carved symbols and broken tools and catatonic humans, everything would change. Every logging operation, every development project, every human expansion into wilderness would have to be reconsidered. We're not alone out there. We've never been alone. And the things that share those forests with us aren't animals. They're something else. Something older. Something that remembers when the trees were everywhere and humans were rare. Something that's been watching us cut down their world piece by piece, tree by tree, acre by acre. And sometimes, when we go too far, when we cross boundaries we don't understand, they teach us lessons we can't forget. I haven't been able to work since the incident. Can't go into forests. Can't even look at lumber without remembering. The company pension and settlement keep me comfortable. But I'm not living. I'm existing, haunted by what I saw and what I allowed to happen. And I'm being followed. I see the same cars outside my apartment. I receive calls from block numbers. No one speaks, but I hear breathing on the other end. I find evidence someone's been in my home when I'm away. Nothing stolen. Nothing damaged. Just small things moved. Rearranged. Positioned differently. Messages. Reminders. Warnings that I'm being watched, that my silence is expected, that speaking out will have consequences. But worst of all are the dreams. Every night, the same dream. I'm in the forest with a chainsaw, approaching a massive Douglas fir. I start cutting, and as the saw bites into the bark, I hear screaming. Humans screaming. Coming from inside the tree. I keep cutting anyway, can't stop, compelled to continue. And when the tree finally falls, I see faces in the growth rings. Hundreds of faces. Thousands. Every person who ever disappeared in wilderness areas, trapped inside the trees, screaming silently as we cut them down. I wake up covered in sweat, and when I look down, there are wood shavings in my bed. Splinters under my fingernails. Dirt on my feet like I've been walking through forests while I sleep. And, in the morning light, I'll find small things in my apartment moved again. Rearranged. A book about forestry placed prominently on my table. A news article about missing hikers left on my counter. A photograph of trees I don't remember taking tape to my mirror. They're telling me they're still watching. Still deciding. Still evaluating whether I've learned my lesson or whether I need to be taught more permanently. So I'm making this video. Breaking my silence. Violating the NDA. Accepting whatever consequences come. Because 3 men are trapped in their own minds, replaying a message they were forced to deliver. Because something in those forests is still taking people, still punishing those who cross invisible lines, still sending warnings that no one hears. Please, like this video, subscribe, and comment below. Tell me if you've heard of other work crews experiencing this. Tell me if there are patterns I'm missing, connections I'm not seeing. Tell me if you know anything about Bigfoot showing this level of intelligence, this degree of calculated communication. Tell me if I'm losing my mind, if the dreams and the moved objects and the constant surveillance are paranoia or reality. Tell me if those men can be saved, if there's treatment, if there's hope they'll ever come back from wherever they were sent when they were positioned in that triangle and used as messengers. Tell me if I should run, if I should disappear, if speaking out was a mistake that's going to cost me everything. But most of all, tell me you believe me. Tell me you understand this wasn't an animal attack. Tell me you recognize that we share these forests with something intelligent and ancient and perfectly willing to punish us when we forget our place. Because if you don't believe me, if this video is dismissed as trauma or fantasy or attention-seeking, then nothing changes. More crews will go into protected forests. More trees will be cut. More boundaries will be crossed. And more people will end up like Brad and Marcus and Devin, alive but gone, trapped in their own minds, forced to deliver warnings no one will hear. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't know if they'll let me continue existing now that I've spoken. I don't know if this video will survive the company's attempts to suppress it or if it will be taken down within hours of going live. So watch it now. Share it now. Download it and re-upload it and spread it as far as you can. Make sure the truth gets out before it can be buried with everything else. And if you ever find yourself working in remote forests, if you ever see territorial markers you don't understand, if you ever feel watched by something you can't identify, remember what happened to my crew. Remember the 3 men sitting in a triangle, staring at trees they were meant to cut, delivering messages in voices that weren't their own. Remember that the forests aren't empty. Remember that we're not the only intelligent species here. Remember that some boundaries, once crossed, carry consequences you can't imagine until it's too late. I learned that lesson. I paid for that lesson. And 3 good men are still paying, will always be paying, trapped forever in the moment they were used as warnings. Don't let it happen to you. Don't let it happen to anyone else. Listen to the forest. Respect the warnings. And if something tells you to leave, leave. Before they make you into a message too.